Wonderful. So we're also going to
WVOX WRTN Neuro Show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Beer and Food Show. I'm your host, Terry Soloman, and for the next hour, we're going to sit here and talk about fine beer, great food, and have a lot of fun. I've got some great guests on tonight, and I'd like to introduce them right now. I have Mr. Phil Markowski, the brewmaster for Southampton Public House. How are you?
Good, Terry. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. We also have Mr. Jim Simpson. Are you from Queens, Jim, or?
Originally from Queens.
Originally from Queens.
Recently moved to Westchester.
Well, Jim is one of the three winners of the Boston Beer's long shot competition, and actually is a champion home brewer who had his beer brewed by the Boston Beer Company, and has now had it nationally, maybe internationally distributed at this point.
It is in Canada.
Absolutely. So wonderful. So we're also going to be very honored to have Mr. Don Sullivan, who is the executive chef at Southampton Public House, and we'll be speaking with him live on the telephone a little bit later on in the show. And he is going to give us a delicious recipe from Southampton Public House out in Southampton, New York. And I can't wait to talk to Don a little bit later. Before we get going and talking to these fine guests, though, let's go to the micro news. Which is sponsored by the Westchester Roadrunner in White Plains, New York, 179 East Post Road, and we'll be talking about them just a little later. So, according to USA Today, Munich's Oktoberfest is so successful this year that German organizers begged visitors to stay away on Sunday. About 700,000 people packed into the vast tent village on the Theresienwiese fairground on Saturday alone, despite radio appeals asking people not to come. Some of the big beer tents even had to close their doors to keep customers out, as the total of visitors for the first week of the fair reached 3.8 million, 300,000 more than last year. By the time the festival closes October 6th, organizers say 7 million festival goers will have consumed 6 million quarts of beer, 600,000 chickens, and 380,000 sausages. Phil, you ever been over there to that?
I have not.
I have. I was there in 1975. Of course, it wasn't as large then. It was a great. Jim, have you ever been over there?
No, I haven't.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. How about that? 7 million festival goers, 6 million quarts of beer. 6 million liters, basically, right?
That's a lot of beer.
It's a lot of beer. A federal judge in Milwaukee has lifted a temporary restraining order allowing the Pabst Brewing Company to cut off the health and death benefits for over 800 of the brewer's retired employees. Pabst said it would start to cut those benefits immediately. Pabst, the nation's sixth largest brewer, has stated it would cease paying the medical insurance and death benefits to save $3.5 million in the hopes of keeping its Milwaukee brewery open. The Missouri Governor's Office has awarded their annual Pollution Prevention Award to Anheuser-Busch Brewery in St. Louis in recognition of AB's success in pioneering the world's largest system for turning wastewater into usable energy. The Bioenergy Recovery System, as it is called, works by using anaerobic bacteria to digest the organic material in the wastewater left over from the brewing process. Brewing wastewater contains starches, proteins, sugars, and other natural ingredients. During the energy recovery process, the anaerobic bacteria produce methane, which is piped back into the system that fires the brewery's boilers. The natural methane gas produced by the system provides 10 to 15% of the brewery's boiler fuel needs. The same amount of energy, by comparison, could heat 4,400 homes in the St. Louis metropolitan area through the winter. The new technology has been installed at 6 Anheuser-Busch breweries. As a tax protest, over 50 Yorkshire pubs in merry old England declared themselves French last Bastille Day, offering pints of British beer at French prices. The pubs charged about 40 cents less per pint to illustrate the difference in duty paid in England versus France. Beer drinkers in France pay about 4 pence per pint in taxes, while British beer drinkers pay nearly 30 pence. Ouch. The Isle of Islay, am I saying that right? Do either of you guys know the Isle of Islay?
Islay, I think.
Islay?
Islay.
Thank you very much, Phil. The Isle of Islay, which produces some of the world's best single malt whiskeys, has lost its third distillery in 8 years. Allied Distiller ended production of its Ardbeg distillery earlier this summer, leaving Islay with a total of 5 distilleries. Slumping whiskey sales have led to the closing of 25 Scottish distilleries in the last 20 years. One Islay distillery is hanging in there, though. Lafroig? Lafroig. Thank you very much. Has gone online, and let me give you their address. It's www.laphroaig.com, and is offering web visitors a chance to register for a free biannual newsletter and win the deed to 1 square foot of Islay. The claim is free of charge and includes a free dram every year. The distiller is quick to warn contestants it is, quote, not offering inheritable ownership or any right to cut peat, farm sheep, or extract minerals from the plot. Heck, I'd be happy with the dram. How about you, Phil? What do you think, Jim? A dram or two. The Atlanta Brewing Company has entered into an agreement allowing it to import 5,000-gallon conditioning tanks of Malone Dark Double Abbey Ale, brewed at the Hocht Brewery in Boortmeerbeek, Belgium. The dark, am I slaughtering these things? You probably know this. I have no idea.
That I don't. I can't help it. Yeah, that's. I just came back from Belgium and I couldn't pronounce any of it.
It's impossible, isn't it? I mean, I love the beers, but it's impossible. I was just talking to a Belgian brewer, as a matter of fact. We were down at DBA in New York City. For those of you who don't know DBA, it's a wonderful bar in New York City. They carry a tremendous selection of not only fine beer, but single malt scotches, ports. As a matter of fact, you name it, they have it. And one of the brewers was in from Belgium on a promotional tour, and we were able to speak with him this weekend, and it was a thrill. But it was hard to understand exactly sometimes what he was saying because of the accent. It was so thick. What are we doing here? Oh yeah, the Atlanta Brewing Company. That's right. They're importing the dark Belgian double made with 3 kinds of malt, Belgian candy sugar, and fermented in oak barrels. And it'll be bottled right there in Atlanta. Let's see. The Black Bear Brewing Company of Atlanta will serve their beers at the historic Duchess Wine Tour restaurant in Schweigen, Germany. Wolfgang Schneider, owner of the popular tourist spot, commented, quote, Europeans are starting to hear about the American microbreweries, and we wanted to be one of the first venues in our country to make the microbrewed beer available. We selected Black Bear Brewing because their ales are the best I have tasted, end quote. Black Bear beers are being produced by the Lang Creek Brewery in Marion, Montana, while construction of the Atlanta brewery is completed. Dutch brewer Heineken has pulled its operations out of Burma and stopped all exports to that troubled country in response to increased pressure from human rights activists leading a boycott against Heineken beers in the United States. Heineken was building a brewery outside Rangoon with heavy government backing. Protesters say the Burmese government may like beer, but they don't like their citizens a whole lot, arresting and torturing them on a whim. Philadelphia's famous Tipler's Tour will continue every Friday through November the 1st. The tour is conducted by Historic Philadelphia Incorporated and stops at various 18th century taverns in the city. The $18 ticket price includes 1 drink at each of the historic watering holes. If you're interested, call 1-800-764-4786. And last, Libya's General People's Congress has approved the death penalty for alcohol and drug smuggling. Congress Speaker Mohammed Zinadi said that under the adopted amendment, Libya would retaliate against any foreign country that engages in smuggling into Libya. He said the hardening of punishments was in accordance with Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi's, with his permission, I guess. Consumption of alcohol has been banned in Libya since Gaddafi's coup against the monarchy in 1969, and that's probably why all those people are so mad all the time, huh? They probably can't get any good beer over there.
Yeah,
well,
you got to fight for your right to drink alcohol.
Absolutely, Jim. I tell you what. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad we're through the microbrew news now, and I want to give you the studio line tonight. Is area code 914-636-0110. 914-636-0110. Here's what I want to know from you listeners tonight. We got a fax, actually this came off America Online. This came to me from a young man. He is high school senior, and he wants to know how people feel about the drinking age. Should it be lowered to 18? Should it be kept at 21, and why? So that's your topic tonight, ladies and gentlemen, on top of the fine beer and food. Of course, if you have any questions for Phil or for Jim, I want you to feel free to call in. Phil Markowski. Phil, you started brewing when?
1984. I was working as an engineer, and a few of my co-workers were home brewers. And I was absolutely fascinated by the idea of brewing beer at home, and I just totally immersed myself in it. Bought all the books I could, brewed a bunch of batches, had some failures. That's how you learn, and I did that for 5 years before I became a professional brewer.
Now, how did you make that transition? How did that come about?
Well, it was, I guess, a stroke of luck, first off, and I really didn't have to think twice about whether or not I wanted to give up my career in engineering to become a professional brewer. That just didn't require a second thought. Other than that, it was fairly difficult to learn the equipment based on what I was used to doing on a home brewing level. But other than that, I'd say it was an easy enough transition because I really wanted to do it.
And where did you end up going to work that first time, Phil?
Well, the first time I was at New England Brewing Company in Norwalk, Connecticut, and was there for 6 years.
Now, Marcia King is the president there at New England Brewing, and you also won a gold medal there, didn't you, at the Great American Beer Fest in 1993?
That's correct, for Atlantic Amber, which was the flagship brand.
Tell us a little bit about that beer and how that beer came to be.
Well, it was based on a brew that I did at home, and certainly the beer did evolve over the history of New England Brewing Company. There's no question that a lot of beers do evolve, and it was a steam style beer, which at the time was unusual, and I felt also it was necessary to produce a classic American style, which steam beer was, as opposed to pale ale, which is a common amber ale that actually has its origins in England. So I wanted something that was an American-style beer, and that's basically how it was born.
Now, for those of you who don't know about the steam style of beer, that is a California common beer that originated back in the mid-1800s. Is that right, Phil? Or?
Well, that's sort of the name that's been applied to it more recently, but there are some brewing texts dating back to 1898, I believe, which describe it as steam beer and describe its process, which what separates it from other styles of beer is that it uses a bottom fermenting or lager yeast, but at an elevated temperature. Typically, lager beers are produced between 45 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit for the fermentation, but with this style, it's a higher temperature. In those days, there was little control over fermentation temperatures, so the range could be anywhere from 60 to 80 degrees would be the fermentation temperature. And with that higher temperature, the yeast is more active and produces more flavors to the beer.
So all in all, you feel that your homebrewing experience really has led to the transformation of the beers that you're brewing and have been brewing. Do you feel that maybe I'm not making myself clear, do you feel that home brewing was really a good base for you to go into professional brewing?
Oh, absolutely, because I guess it allowed me a place to make mistakes where only I knew about them. And that's how I learned. I mentioned that before, that you learn from mistakes in anything that you do. And home brewing was an opportunity to produce an experiment on a wide basis, produce either classic styles or do some really strange things that didn't work out, and I would not want to admit to right now.
And now here we are in 1996, and you're brewing for what has to be the premier brew pub on Long Island, Southampton Public House. You're brewing some wonderful beers out there. As a matter of fact, how many beers, 20, 25 seasonal beers a year is what you're shooting for?
20 to 25 seasonal beers. That's in addition to the 5 regular beers that we have on tap.
And those regular beers include some of the best I've ever tasted. I have to tell you that right now.
Oh, thank you.
And a lot of people are agreeing with me. I just read the new issue of the Ale Street News, which has just come out. Alan Wax seems to agree with me. He wrote a fantastic article on you guys. Also, I don't know if you've had a chance, Jim, to taste these beers yet, but you really have to make the drive out to Southampton.
That's a hike for me.
You got to go, though. I'm telling you, it's going to be absolutely worth it. Southampton Gold, a Kolsch-style beer. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, a Kolsch style is a light golden ale, which is brewed exclusively in the city of Cologne, Germany, and actually by law cannot be brewed anywhere else in Germany. And it is a light, fruity ale. It's very subtle beer with actually a lot of finesse. It's easy drinking beer. It's got the character that all beer should have, that is malt and hop character, and just a faint amount of fruitiness from the fermentation. It is technically an ale, but the Germans don't produce ales as the British do. They tend to keep the fermentation temperatures down, which reduces the fruitiness in the beer. And to me, it's an interesting style, and it is currently not being imported into the U.S. So it's an opportunity to brew something here that is otherwise not available.
Very nice, round, smooth beer, isn't it? I really enjoyed that beer. What about the East End India Pale Ale? Now, this was really caught people's attention. This is one of the standout beers that you're brewing, and it's a shame you couldn't get it out to the GABF this year, because I really think you would have brought home a medal with that. Let's talk a little bit about how you make it and what makes this beer a special beer.
Well, India Pale Ale, just a little background on it for those listeners who may not be familiar, is a style of pale ale which has its roots in England, as all pale ales do. But this was a beefed up version, if you will. It's slightly higher in gravity, which means its alcohol content is a bit higher than conventional pale ale. And it's also made with additional hops, which acted as a preservative in the olden days. And it was a big beer like that survived the voyage to India, hence the name India Pale Ale. The way we produce it is by using English ingredients and English yeast, an authentic English ale yeast. And
so
I think
you brought
that's
a yeast over from England?
Yes, indirectly.
Okay. I'm going to cut you off right here, and we're going to go away for just a minute or so here. We're going to hear from Westchester's first microbrewery restaurant, the Westchester Brewing Company.
If you appreciate fresh, handcrafted beer and fine food to go with it, listen up. It's the grand opening of Westchester's first brew pub, Westchester Brewing Company in White Plains. Enjoy all-natural beer brewed right on premises, straight from the serving tanks, fresh to your glass. Try Headless Horseman, a traditional amber ale made with rich English malts and 3 varieties of imported and domestic hops, along with brewer Keith Simon's other original variations on classic beer styles. Westchester Brewing Company offers a variety of fine menu choices for lunch, dinner, or late-night snacking. Call them at 997-0001 to find out about new beer tastings, brewmasters' dinners, and other special events. And be sure to ask about their private function room. It's perfect for holiday parties or any private gathering. Westchester Brewing Company is located at 179 Mamaroneck Avenue in White Plains, between Post Road and Maple Avenue. And it's easy to get to from all major highways and Metro North Harlem lines. There's plenty of convenient parking. Stop by Westchester Brewing Company today and enjoy Westchester's own fresh, all-natural, handcrafted beer.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, for the last 10 years, the Katona Beverage Barn has been seeking out and selling the finest microbrewed, imported, domestic, and locally brewed beers available. They have a large handcrafted keg selection for parties and get-togethers. As a matter of fact, David Krebs, the owner, can set you up with everything you'll need for the next party, for your next party, from sparkling waters, sodas, mixers, ice. He can figure out how much ice you're going to need. That's how good David is. And he can set you up with a keg kit for under $100. He has iced teas, fruit drinks, everything. Just give him a call at area code 914-232-7842 or email the Beverage Barn at zythos@aol.com. Or once again, call them at 914-232-7842. Go in and browse the shelves at the Katona Beverage Barn. Take your time and learn about the different beer styles and flavors. Ask questions. They have a very knowledgeable staff at the Katona Beverage Barn. Get to know the guys. Dave can help you with something as simple as choosing an appropriate beer for dinner or creating a complete beverage and ice plan for your next party or function. The Katona Beverage Barn is located on Woodbridge Road in Katona, just a few minutes away from almost anywhere in Westchester, just off exit number, I believe it's 6 off of 684, Right at the end of the Sawmill River Parkway. They have plenty of parking, and all you have to do is look for the Big Red Barn. Please give Dave Krebs a call up there, 914-232-7842. Did I mention the Katona Beverage Barn delivers? That's right, folks. The Katona Beverage Barn delivers. Call them at 914-232-7842 or email zythos@aol.com, zythos@aol.com. The Katona Beverage Barn. By the way, if you tell them you heard about them on the Beer and Food Show, they'll give you 10% off your next purchase. I'd also like to talk a little bit about Michael's Gourmet Foods, 24 Harwood Court in Scarsdale Village, New York. Call Michael at 914-723-3024. You know, Michael has unique specialty foods, fresh produce, custom cut meats, 20 varieties of coffee beans, blended and ground to order, fresh Norwegian and Scotch salmon, pâtés, imported cheeses, spices, herbs, gift baskets for all occasions. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael's at 24 Harwood Court, Scarsdale Village, will put together a microbrewed gift basket for you and send it wherever you need it sent. They've got cold cuts, fine imported and microbrewed beers including Anchor Steam, Harpoon, Sierra Nevada, Ruffian, Eldridge Pope, Rogue, Catamount, Stouts, Brooklyn IPA, Hexenbrau, Polliner, and more. Get over there today and check out Michael's Gourmet Foods. Tell them you heard about them on the Beer and Food Show with Terry Soloman. They'll give you a 10% discount. 24 Harwood Court, Scarsdale Village, New York. Call 914-723-3024. We're back with Phil Markowski and Jim Simpson. Phil, we were talking a little bit about the different beers that you're brewing out at Southampton Public House. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to be brewing out there in Southampton, what it's like to work for the Sullivans and to make this change. You're coming back from Maine or Vermont. Where were you before?
New Hampshire, actually.
In New Hampshire. Where were you brewing up in New Hampshire?
In Merrimack, which happened to be the home of Anheuser-Busch. We were about 2 miles away from a 3 million barrel Anheuser-Busch facility, which was very interesting, actually.
The yin and the yang.
In a sense. Actually, that was their experimental brewery.
You keep talking.
So
I'm going to open another one of these beers.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are tasting beers, and we're going to invite you a little. I'm sorry to cut you off, Phil. I do this to everybody. I annoy the heck out of people. We've been tasting some beers here tonight. We started out with the Long Shot American Pale Ale, which Jim this is his recipe, brewed by the Boston Beer Company. And we're taste testing these beers, and we'll be sharing our thoughts about them with you a little bit later. We're also going to be testing some beers sent down by David Krebs from the Katona Beverage Barn, and we'll be talking a little bit about those throughout the evening. Now, Phil, I'm sorry. Please, go ahead now. You were brewing next door to a 3 million barrel plant.
Right, that was in Merrimack, New Hampshire. But now I'm in Southampton, and that's what I want to talk about. And it's a great facility. It's really a beautiful spot. It's an old restaurant that's it's been a restaurant for 60 some odd years, so it's an established landmark restaurant, and it's just beautiful. And the Hamptons are, what can you say about the Hamptons? They're gorgeous, and it's a great spot to work. The Sullivans are great guys to work for, and I look forward to experimenting with a lot of different beers. And the one that's coming up that I'm really interested in is we're making what I'm calling late harvest ale, which would be a wheat-based ale fermented with Chardonnay grapes, which are from the Sag Pond Vineyard, which is about 5 miles down the road from us. They're in Bridgehampton.
And that really caught Michael Jackson's attention at the Brooklyn Beer Festival, didn't it?
It did, yeah. He was really interested in that one. And what we're going to do is release some on draft. And I will add, by the way, that we will be selling our beer on draft in Manhattan.
In selected locations, or
in selected locations, the beer bars that people frequent. You mentioned DVA before.
Right.
That'll be one of them. And
Ginger Man. I know that I was talking with the beer manager there just a couple of weeks ago, and he was salivating at the thought of getting your beers in there. So I think that's a wonderful sign.
Oh, they'll be around Sam's Waterfront Ale House, all those places that are known for having a good beer selection. We're certainly going to try and push our products there.
Grapes would you be using on this beer?
Well, that's something I haven't.
Secret?
Well,
it's
not
a
only
secret
that,
because he doesn't know yet.
Decided. That's exactly right. And that's part of the fun. You just you try things, you experiment,
and now you're going to take a certain percentage of that brew, and my understanding is age it in oak barrels. Is that right?
That's correct. It's going to be barrel aged, and then we're going to hand bottle it in champagne bottles.
And
So
that
we'll
will be
have
available to who?
Well, to consumers in Metro New York City and out on Long Island. So we'll make it available. It will be scarce. There's no doubt about that. But it will not be released until 1997.
Now, like you, I've done some work with the Sullivans, and I really appreciate them. They are really a bright group of people, and they really know what they're doing with this restaurant brewery. And bringing you in as their brewer just points that out beautifully. Have they given you a lot of room to do what you want to do as a brewer? I know that some restaurant owners or brewery owners can be very restrictive with their brewers. They want them to brew a straight profile. Have they given you a little room to do what it is you want to do?
They've given me all the room,
Mm-hmm.
so they've not interfered at all. But I also realize that you need a range of beers that are familiar to people. You don't have 6 beers that are very unconventional. You need to have some conventional styles so that there's something to appeal to everyone, and that's the goal that I have. We're going to have a minimum of 6 beers on tap, 6 if not 7 or 8 at any given time, and hopefully there's something on draft at any given time that'll appeal to anybody,
And
whether they're a novice or an experienced beer drinker.
so now, what beers do you have out there now? What seasonals do you have going?
Currently I have a Belgian white ale, which is brewed the authentic way. I have Curacao orange peel, coriander seed, unmalted wheat, and a real Belgian white beer yeast. So it's as authentic as I can possibly make it. And in addition to that, we have a cherry wheat ale, which was produced with 250 pounds of cherries for about 300 gallons. So it's got a lot of cherry flavor.
Is it a sweet cherry flavor or a sour cherry?
It's a blend of both sweet and sour cherries, but the sour cherries do dominate. And upcoming, we have a secret ale, which is a Dusseldorf-style alt beer that has been aged for a longer period of time, and it's also been dry hopped. So that's coming up, and also an Oktoberfest lager will be introduced this coming Saturday at our Oktoberfest.
That's right. Let's talk a little bit about that. The Southampton Public House is celebrating the coming of fall. It looks like you have a cornucopia of special events coming up out there. As a matter of fact, as you mentioned, Saturday, October 5th, you're going to celebrate Oktoberfest from 2 to 6 p.m. You'll be serving traditional German Oktoberfest beers and food. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, we will be. We'll also have a live band playing traditional beer drinking music. So it should be great. And also, we're going to unveil our Oktoberfest lager at that point. It'll go on tap starting at 2 p.m. With a formal ceremony, which we have an old German wooden keg, and we're going to tap it and serve it right from that keg, which is something that's very popular in Bavaria, particularly northern Bavaria. They like to serve the beer ungespunden, as they call it, which is a wooden keg that sits on the bar, and it's just drawn by gravity. We're going to try and do it as traditional as we can.
It sounds wonderful.
It should be a lot of fun.
I can't wait to get out there. That's Saturday, October 5th, from 2 to 6 p.m. Now, on Tuesday, October 15th, Phil, you're going to be giving an introductory beer class?
That's right. It's going to be a class that'll be for anyone who's has had a passing interest in getting to know microbrew beers, or just beers in general, just knowing how to appreciate them, knowing what flavor variations we get in beer and why. There are only 4 classic ingredients: water,